Hello, everybody. Welcome
There we
back.
go.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to the CrowdChatter podcast, everyone. That's Mitch. I'm Jacob. Here we are going to be doing our bowl season preview, talking about the playoff games, talking about all the bowl games. These aren't our official picks. We're going to I'm going to make leaning predictions for teams and the games, but I'm not making any official picks just yet. I've only gotten to look at these games once.
Next week.
Um,
Next week.
Next week we'll have a full picks video. And the obviously we also want to get another week because with how crazy the transfer portal has been. We want to see who's going to be not playing in these games.
There's already a lot of people not playing.
Exactly. So we need to see who's not playing. But that being said, I have done a little bit more research on the G5 this year. I do my stat sheets every year, and I've done them for all the G5 conferences now. So I have a little bit more knowledge on the G5. So hopefully that will help bringing this to you. But let's start as we always do. The first bowl game of every single year, the Bahamas Bowl in, you guessed it, the Bahamas. December 16th, you will have the Miami, Ohio Redhawks at 6-6 playing the University of Alabama Birmingham Blazers, also at 6-6 of the Conference USA. Now, let's quickly break down these two teams' resumes. Miami, Ohio, some of their toughest opponents they played are Kentucky and Cincinnati. Their best win, Kent State is their best win.
All right.
Their worst loss is probably to Western Michigan, and they're 6-6 probably in the MAC, which is one of the lesser conferences, probably the worst conference of the Power 5. Their best team is ranked 65th overall, and all these CBS 150. And then let's take a look at the Blazers. They played some good teams. Their worst loss is probably going to be their loss to Florida Atlantic. Their best win, they beat down North Texas, who was in the Conference USA Championship and hung around for a little bit against LSU. I don't really know actually too much of these teams' play styles. I know Miami, Ohio is a more defensive team. They don't have very much offense at all, and UAB does score a lot of points. UAB is coming out of a better conference, so I'll give the edge to the Blazers in this one, but it's not my official pick.
Yeah, I don't know much about either of these teams. I'm more of a Power Five guy myself. I do know a bit about some of the Group of Five teams. Like our next game here, I know a little bit more about both of those teams. But between these two, I don't know much. I mean, I do know that UAB made it close with LSU for a little bit in Baton Rouge, and you'd say they beat North Texas and so again, I don't know much. I'd probably take UAB, but not that I know much about either of these two. Kelvin, I know, will be rooting for Miami, Ohio, for his fantasy purposes.
Oh, nice. And now we've got, honestly, one of my top 5 bowls I'm most excited for in the Cure Bowl. The Cure Bowl will be taking place in Orlando, Florida, versus the Conference USA champion 25th ranked UTSA Roadrunners of the Conference USA and the 24th ranked Troy Trojans of the Sun Belt Conference. Both teams 11-2, both teams conference champions. The best team UTSA played was a Texas team in which they lost 40-21 in Austin. And then they've beaten all of their teams. They went undefeated in their conference, beating other bowl teams such as Middle Tennessee State, Western Kentucky, North Texas, UAB. For some reason, Rice is in there, even though they're 5-7. Don't ask me why. So UTSA overall, pretty good team. Obviously, made a huge run last year, made a huge stamp, which was really fun. And then we go over to the Sun Belt, where we have the Troy Trojans. They've got some nice wins. The best team they played against Ole Miss, falling 28-10. Was on a Hail Mary to Appalachian State, if you all remember that in week 2.
The wild start of the season for App State.
One of the wild starts. Other than that,
He's not in the bowl game this year.
No, exactly.
And they're 6-6.
But Rice is. I don't care. Anyway, you got Appalachia. Those losses. Their big wins are Marshall, who obviously beat Notre Dame, South Alabama, who is 39th ranked team, and they just blew out Coastal Carolina in the championship game. So here's my thing. UTSA is a lot of offense and some decent defense. Troy is the more balanced team. For the most part, Troy can win either way. Troy can win in a higher scoring game. They beat Western Kentucky 34-27. And they can slug it out with you if they need to. They played at South Alabama and they won 10-6. They also beat Army 10-9 and Marshall 16-7. So they can slug it out if they need to. I think Troy's the more balanced team. I think the Sun Belt is a better conference than the Conference USA. I love me some Roadrunners. I think it's going to be a really fun game. But I think if they need to play fast, they can, and I would give the edge to the Trojans in this one.
Yeah, these are two teams who had a really good year. Of course, UTSA winning the both teams conference champions this year. UTSA a repeat champion after I think beating Western Kentucky last year.
That was the shootout last year.
Yeah, that was Bailey Zappi last year. But these are two solid teams. Like Srbensky said, if you guys remember my Bulls video from last year, this game kind of reminds me of the UTSA San Diego State game from a year ago, which was clearly the best of the top half of the bowl games, of which I went over and I picked. Then the back half got better. But this should be a really fun game. A great way to start off bowl season, and Saturday's gonna be really good too. But this is a really good. This is a really fun game. 3 o'clock on ESPN, as you can see. Gonna be definitely one to see. I guess I'd take Troy, but I'm not. I don't really know a whole lot about these teams. I know they've beaten some solid ones, but other than that, I don't know much of the players.
Yep, exactly. And we move on to the Scott Satterfield Bowl. I mean, the Fenway Bowl between Louisville and Cincinnati, obviously in Fenway Park. We've got the Louisville Cardinals of the ACC at, I believe, 7-5, and we've got the Cincinnati Bearcats of the American Conference. I think one of the last few years, if not the last year, that they're going to be in the American. I don't remember if they moved to the Big 12 in 23 or 24.
Louisville or Cincinnati. This is the last year. They'll be in the Big 12 next year.
Cincinnati of the last year, and they're in the American Conference. Best team Cincinnati played was Tulane, and they lost a 3-point game to Tulane, which did not allow them to go into the conference championship game. Louisville, obviously, some of their where is the ACC? I don't even have the ACC pulled up. If I'm just thinking about it, I don't remember what their best win is. I know their worst loss is probably
Boston College.
Boston College. Both teams are pretty good. Obviously, Louisville's coach just left, leaving before he could get fired eventually if the things didn't turn around fully. He turned it around. He was definitely on a hot seat early.
It really did look like he was going to get fired, but then before Louisville could decide just get rid of him entirely, he decides to go to the team he'll be playing in the bowl game.
Exactly, and then you've got the Bearcats, who also don't have their coach anymore because Luke Fickell went to greener pastures in Wisconsin. So, I think I would favor Cincinnati slightly in this one, by like 3, but it's like a field goal game. I would say like 27-24, but I think I'd slightly favor Cincinnati in this one.
I think this is actually the first year that the Fenway Bowl is actually being played. As I'm pretty sure last year was supposed to be like SMU and somebody, and it got canceled because someone had COVID and they couldn't get a replacement. So this is actually, I think, the first year that the Fenway Bowl actually be played. So pretty interesting to finally see a bowl game, football game being played at Fenway Park, and be really cool. I'd probably favor Louisville in this one because of Malik Cunningham. He's a really good quarterback for Louisville. Now it'll be interesting to see which team Satterfield actually coaches for in this game, as it's going to be one or the other or neither. So that'll be interesting. Yeah, three different possibilities.
I'd be shocked to see him on the Louisville sideline, though.
Yeah. So this would be a really fun game. I do like Cincinnati's team is solid, but I think Louisville. I mean, they've been obviously wild and all over the place this year, but I like Malik Cunningham to carry the Cardinals to probably win this game. Of course, we're not picking games, but I'll just tell you right now, I'm probably picking Louisville when it comes next week.
Yeah, And honestly, a fun fact: Syracuse was actually a heavy favorite to be in this bowl game, but they asked not to be in this bowl game because it was during their finals week. So
Hmm.
they didn't end up being in it. Anyway, we moved to the New Mexico Bowl in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Honestly, that might be a fun game for me to drive to if it's cheap. You've got the SMU Mustangs of the American Conference versus the BYU Cougars, who are independents. I don't have BYU's sheets, so I really don't know too much about them. I know they beat Baylor.
They
That's
did,
about it.
yes, they did beat Baylor. They also,
Um,
I think they've lost to, or no, they beat Boise State, I believe. They're okay.
they're okay. And then you've got the Mustangs, man. I mean, early in the season, they had a narrow loss to Maryland, had a narrow loss to the now playoff team in the TCU Horned Frogs in the Battle of the Iron Skillet. Lost by only 8 points against a playoff team. And then in conference play, had some rough goes at it. Got beat down by Tulane, which a lot of people did. Lost to
Played a
SMU and
shootout against Houston.
lost to UCLA, Cincinnati, and then of course, yeah, the most famous game of the year for them. They won the shootout against Houston, 77-63. So if you don't know, this team can definitely score points. The lowest point total they scored all year was 24 against Tulane. Other than that, you've got 34, 41, 77, 45, 27, 40, 41, 34, 48, 45. So they're averaging in the 40s. At that 70, probably brought them up to averaging 40 points per game. I don't really know much about BYU. I know they had some bad times, but I was looking at both quarterbacks. Both quarterbacks have like over 3,000 passing yards. So this should be a fun game. I expect it to be a very high scoring game. Very high scoring game. But give me the Mustangs. Probably is what I'm leaning right now. Not gonna say for sure, but I'm leaning SMU right now. They're 52nd. It looks pretty even. They're ranked 52, and BYU's ranked 60. So
Well, this SMU is all gas, no brakes. They have a very good offense with Tanner Mordecai, I believe, at QB, and has no defense whatsoever. Their goal is to outscore you. That is their goal in life. They are not going to try to play defense against you. Their only goal is to literally put up as many points as possible and hope that it gets them by. As for BYU, they have, I believe, Jaron Hall at quarterback, solid QB for the Cougars. Receiving room, I think they've had a couple injuries. Don't know if those guys are back yet. These are both solid teams. I think the difference in this game, though, will probably be BYU's defense. However, SMU could always outscore the BYU just as much. So I guess I'd give the edge to BYU, but this is one of those 50-50 games that can always change at any point in time, especially if someone just decides to transfer or go to the NFL, which we've seen a billion times already so far.
all right, now we go to another really fun game. We'll start picking up the pace because we got a lot of bowl games to get through. We'll
Yeah.
start picking up the pace, but we've got a really fun game. We've got the Fresno State Bulldogs, who are the Mountain West champions and have been cooking as of recently. They kind of fell off people's radars because they lost Jake Hayner at some point. I think they lost it close to Oregon State. Then they got blown out by USC, which people expected. And then they lost to UConn. And I think that's when people stopped caring about Fresno State. But they didn't have Jake Hayner at the time. And then they lost one more game, and after that they won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They won 8 straight games. 41 to 9, 55 to 23, 41 to 14, 30 to 0. So they started, as soon as they got Jake Hayner back, they started blowing teams out. And then they're playing the Washington State Cougars, who played really good against a lot of good teams, but I don't think ever really found out how to pull out the huge upset. They pretty much beat up the bottom of the Pac-12 and then played close with the top, which is good. I would lean Fresno State in this game, though, just because they are the absolute hotter team coming in. They are an insanely hot team coming in, and I always love those teams riding huge momentum streaks, especially with Jake Hayner, who's an amazing quarterback. So give me the Bulldogs. Or I'm not going to say give me the Bulldogs, but I'm leaning the Bulldogs.
Yeah, this bowl game. Almost every time that I see it, I always want to pick the Pac-12 team. But this might be the one year where I actually might go with the Mountain West. I really like Fresno State. Like you said, Jake Hayner, outstanding quarterback for the Bulldogs. Washington State has a decent QBT and QB too, and Cameron Ward. He's a solid QB as well. Obviously, he did pretty well against Washington, the Apple Cup, which the Cougars, Washington State, aren't they the Cougars? Yeah, Washington
Yeah,
State Cougars. They made it close with the Huskies until the end, where they just got destroyed by Michael Penix, like everybody else has this year. Fresno State, though, I like both of these teams, so I like this to be a fun one in SoFi Stadium, which, fun fact, is home of the national championship game this year. I like both of these teams. Should be a fun one, but I'm probably leaning the Mountain West right now for the first time.
nice. And now we go to a bottom three bowl of the year in the Lending Tree Bowl. Southern Miss 6-6 of the Sun Belt Conference, and Rice, the only 5-7 team out of the Conference USA. The Conference USA literally had 5 teams bowl eligible and needed one more, so like take Rice. I don't know why they didn't take FAU, but by all means, Rice's best win is they beat UAB. Other than that,
There
they've
you
pretty
go.
much gotten blown out every team they've played that's good. And they got blown out by Charlotte, who is one of the worst FBS teams. What? Charlotte is on the CBS 130. Charlotte is ranked 127 out of 131, and they played Charlotte at home. It was at Rice, and they lost 56-23
Oh,
to a Charlotte team who was at that point putting up like 16 points per game.
that's not good.
So, Southern Miss is out of a better conference and didn't lose a Charlotte. So give me Southern Miss in that one. I'm gonna watch all these games, but I'm telling you, that one might be on the second screen. I might not be paying attention to that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about either of these teams, but I think the fact that Southern Miss is only favored by 7 is a crime. So,
Considering.
I guess you guys can figure out who I'm picking to win the Lending Tree Bowl.
Woohoo! All right, let's move on to a bowl that kind of lost a little bit of its luster. The Las Vegas Bowl between the 14th ranked Oregon State Beavers and the Florida Gators. It was going to be a really anticipated game for me. I was really excited for it. I still am excited for it, but it did lose a bit of its luster with the news that Anthony Richardson is declaring for the draft. So, obviously, that's a huge blow to Florida. Because from what I know, their backup is not very good.
Well, their backup isn't even on the team anymore because it was
Yeah.
Jalen Kitna.
Oh, and he's transferring?
No, he just got dismissed from the team for off-field problems.
Oh, nice. And I know they had that Del Rio Wilson, but then he transferred to Syracuse.
In other
And
words, they don't really have a QB.
I was about to say Del Rio Wilson stunk in his games that he played at Syracuse, but that's besides the point. Yeah. So without a quarterback, I would probably take the Beavers. The biggest key in this game is Florida's defense going to be able to stop the run? Because it seems like if you can stop the run for Oregon State, you might be able to beat them. Considering, I don't know, their last game that they played, they ran like 30 straight runs and won.
That was a bad game by Oregon.
Yeah. But, oh my gosh, we're not even like halfway through this. But give me the Beavers and let's keep moving. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah, I do like both of these teams. Personally, I've always liked the Florida Gators just because I like doing the Gator chomp. But this Florida defense is not good, and really without a QB, they still have a good running room. I believe their top guy, he might be transferring or something, or he's hurt. I don't remember. But they still have Trevor Etienne, who's a really good running back, and other than that, really, Florida doesn't have much else. As for Oregon State, they've been a solid team this year. I believe their starting quarterback is also transferring. Chance Nolan. I believe he's transferring. If that was a starter for him, but both of these teams are solid. But I like Oregon State considering Florida is missing their best player.
Mm-hmm. Man, this next one, I don't even know. This next one's pretty good. You've got North Texas versus Boise State in the Frisco Bowl in Frisco, Texas.
Yep.
I think Boise State's a slightly better team. This is what's fun about bowl games. You never really know because you don't know how conferences are going to mix. Because Boise State has a better record, but they also got to play Colorado State, New Mexico, Hawaii. They got to play some really bad teams. Whereas North Texas did play some bad teams, but not let's be honest, not as many as Boise State got to. North Texas is out of I think a slightly better conference. Both these teams lost their conference title games. I think I might, for right now, give the edge to North Texas only slightly because it's going to be in Texas. I don't think Boise State fans are going to travel too much to Texas. So give me leaning North Texas right now, just solely because of where it's at.
Yeah, how's this Boise State game? How will this Boise State team play away from their beloved blue field? This should be a solid game, like you said. Both teams losing their conference championships. Boise State on their beloved blue field to Fresno State, and North Texas losing at UTSA. Uh, Both of these are solid teams. Boise State a clearly heavy favorite in this one with a 10-point line here in favor of Boise State. Uh, I don't really know who to pick in this one as I haven't really watched either team. Boise State does have the better record, but they've also lost to a couple not great teams, I think. Don't remember.
UTEP is a pretty bad loss.
Yeah, that's not
And
good.
then UTEP's a pretty bad loss, and BYU is not a great loss considering it was at home. And then their other two losses are Fresno State and Oregon State. So not terrible, but the UTEP loss is pretty bad.
I guess I would go with North Texas because, like you said, it is in Texas, and Boise State Uh, they're decent, but after really not playing all that well at home against Fresno State, they might be demoralized a little bit. I think Texas has a little bit of a home field advantage here, or North Texas anyway. I'll go with the mean green.
So
Or
if you
I'll
look at
lean mean
their
green.
UTEP is a common opponent. North Texas did blow them out. So not that matters. Different teams match up differently, but just as food for thought. And now we go to probably the bowl I am least excited to watch. Like, first off, congratulations, UConn, from how terrible of a season you had last year to make it to a bowl game. Unfortunately, they decided to put you in a bowl game against a team that's actually pretty good. I don't know why they didn't put them in a bowl game against a team that would have been more equivalent to them. Like, I would have watched UConn Rice, see if UConn can beat Rice. But I just think Marshall's going to wipe the floor with them. I think this is going to be a blowout game. I don't think UConn really stands too much of a chance. I could be completely wrong, but I just think Marshall's 8-4. They're from a better well, UConn isn't from a conference. They played a tougher schedule, played better teams, beat them, won in South Bend. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm taking Marshall.
Yeah, I mean UConn, great season for Jim Moore on his first year with UConn, a team that's literally been absolutely horrible for like the past decade. And he gets them to 6-6, carries them into a bowl game for the first time in however long it was. And well, they're stuck playing Marshall, who is a decent team, not a world beater by any stretch, but compared to UConn, it's not a good matchup. I'd lean with the Thundering Herd in this one.
Mm-hmm. And now we move on to our next bowl game, which will be the Potato Bowl. Talking about that blue field, we'll be in Boise, Idaho, for the Potato Bowl versus the San Jose State. What are they? They're like
Spartans.
Spartans. San Jose State Spartans and the Eagles, right?
Yep.
Eastern Michigan Eagles. Both teams 8-4.
Seven
San Jose
four for
State
San Jose State,
or
but
seven and
close
four
enough.
and 8-4. because they had that New Mexico State game postponed because there was the
Canceled
tragedy.
because of the
Canceled.
guy who passed away. Because
The guy who
I don't
passed
know if it
away.
was a shooting or no, it was a scooter incident. That's
Yeah,
what it
the guy
was.
passed away, so they canceled that game. So they finished 7-4 versus they finished 8-4.
Yeah.
San Jose State lost 2 of their last 3, though. To be fair, 2 of their last 3 were San Diego State, Utah State. Who Utah State's not very good, but you know, I don't really know what to think because a lot of these wins for San Jose State are against pretty bad teams. They did blow out Western Michigan though, who's a common opponent to Eastern. Eastern finished the season pretty good. Was a win out from going to their conference title game. They did lose to Northern Illinois though. That's not a good team. But
No.
I'll lean for right now. I think San Jose State's the better team, but I would lean Eastern Michigan because they have 3 straight wins to end the year. So I'd lean the team with more momentum right now.
Yeah, let me be the homer. I'd probably lean towards EMU in this one. I mean, San Jose State is a solid team, but like you said, Eastern's been a little has ended the year stronger. So I guess I'll go Eagles,
Yeah.
or I would go Eagles.
Now we've got the Boca Raton Bowl, and you guessed it, Boca Raton, Florida, between the MAC champion Toledo Rockets and the Liberty Flames. Now, Toledo obviously didn't have as great of an end of the season as they wanted, but they did finish it off by winning the MAC. And Liberty did not have a great end of the season. They got that nice win over BYU and that nice win over Arkansas, and then the wheels completely fell off.
And Hugh
Losing
Freeze
to
is now at
UConn.
Auburn.
Hugh Freeze is gone. They lost to UConn, Virginia Tech, and New Mexico State. New Mexico State, by the way, was 4-6 at the time. They ended up making a bowl game, but New Mexico State blew them out at Liberty, 49-14. That is not good. That is really bad. Give me Toledo. I don't like Toledo, but give me Toledo.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. Toledo denying Ohio a chance at a MAC championship for the first time in like 50 years.
68 and 68.
Yeah. So I think this should be a decent game. Liberty has had some good games. I mean, obviously they'll be without their head coach, which will hurt. But I'll be a pro again, or I'll be a homer again. Give me the Christians. I'll take. I'll go. I'll lean Liberty. I'll lean the Flames. I'll lean Liberty. Toledo's a decent team, but I like the Liberty Flames, so I'll lean
All
towards
right.
them.
And now we have another interesting game, a clash of styles again. We've got the New Orleans Bowl in New Orleans, Louisiana, where we'll have the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers versus of the Conference USA versus the South Alabama Jaguars of the Sun Belt. South Alabama is a pretty defensive-heavy team. They can score some points, but this is their season ended really weird. So they won a game 38-31. Then they won a game 38-21. And then they beat Southern Miss 27-20, and then they beat Old Dominion 27-20. So a very consistent team in scoring the same amount of points. So South Alabama can put up a decent bit of points. Some of their bigger games, obviously, they lost to Troy very close, 10-6. They were a field goal away from beating UCLA on the road early in the season. They lost 32-31. On a last-second UCLA field goal, if you guys remember that. And
Yep.
Western Kentucky had some pretty good games. Obviously lost to UTSA. This Western Kentucky team actually played Troy and lost to them as well. And then the end of the season, they got beat down by Auburn. I would say, again, same thing I said with Troy. The conference here in the Sun Belt, I think, is probably the best Group of 5 conference, in my opinion, besides maybe the Americans probably slightly better. But I would take South Alabama in this one, favoring South Alabama, just better conference.
Yeah, like you said, South Alabama has been a defensive team this year. Western Kentucky carrying over the offense from a year ago. I think their quarterback, Austin Reed, he might be transferring, if I'm correct. So they won't be with Western Kentucky, probably without their QB in this game. Should be a fun one, but I'd still favor the Jaguars, South Alabama
Jaguars. Yep,
Jaguars. Okay, yeah,
Jaguars. So we got a fun.
I'll probably favor South Alabama.
Got another fun one here: the Armed Forces Bowl between Baylor and Air Force, Fort Worth, Texas. If you don't like points, you better watch this game, Bucko. If you don't like watching points be put on the board, Air Force does not put many points on the board, and they do not allow many points to be put on the board. This should be a fun one. Baylor obviously having a. I mean, I don't think a lot of people expected them to, be the best Big 12 team, except for maybe Desmond Howard.
Yeah, Desmond Howard,
I don't know why I was start confusing myself.
who had what was it,
Desmond Howard, who
Michigan, Baylor, Texas
Texas
A&M,
A&M.
and Pitt in the CFP.
Wow, really making
We love
really
you,
really
Des.
looking
We
good,
love you, Des. We love you.
but really looking crazy there. Um, but no, they didn't have as great of a season. Air Force went 9-3 though. Pretty good year for the Air Force Eagles. I would say I'm gonna favor Air Force in this one just slightly. It should be fun though, especially because it's in Fort Worth. But I give it lean slightly Air Force.
Yeah, I believe in the last bowl game for this one, the last time it was Missouri and Army, which was, I believe, a decent game last year during the bowls.
That one
Uh,
probably didn't have a lot of points.
which I don't think it did. But this one I think should be decent. Baylor had an up and down year. They had some good games. They had some not so good games. As for Air Force, they play in the Mountain West, which is decent. I think it's gonna be really fun. I mean, Baylor's favored by 6.5 in this game, which I think might be a little high considering how inconsistent Baylor has been this year. Because Baylor has shown that they can score at times and then cannot score at times, and then can play defense and then cannot play defense. So Baylor has been, like I said, wildly inconsistent. Depends on which Baylor will show up for this game. It is in Fort Worth, which is a little closer to Baylor than Air Force. Uh, I'll probably go with the Falcons though. It's the Armed Forces Bowl. It's all pro. It's all pro. Army in this one. So I'll go with the armed force. The armed force. I'll take Air Force.
Army versus Missouri last year ended. Army rallied to win 24-22, so a little bit more points than I thought.
Oh.
And now we've got the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana, between the Louisiana Agents and the Houston Cougars. It is in Louisiana. It's the only reason I think Louisiana has a shot in this game, because I think Houston's just a better team. I mean, yeah, Houston did. They ended their season with a bad loss against Tulsa, if I'm not mistaken. But
they are very close to Tulane, I know.
They did lose in overtime at Texas Tech. They're one of the two teams that beat UTSA. They lost an overtime game to Tulane. They lost that shootout to SMU, and their big wins. East Carolina, that was the one. They went on the road. They went on the road to the ECU Pirates and won 42-3. Yeah, they had a really good end to the season. Louisiana, up and down team. Beat Eastern Michigan. They lost to Rice. That's not good. They lost to Louisiana Monroe. That's also not good. And they got blown out by Florida State. But everybody gets blown out by Florida State at this rate. Louisiana played on the worst side of the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt West is significantly weaker than the Sun Belt East. They lost to the two teams that are actually good in that side of the conference. I would lean Houston in this one. They're just a better team.
Yeah, first year for Louisiana post Billy Napier era has not gone all that well. Houston, not a great team by any stretch, but Clayton Tune is certainly a good QB, and I think he'll carry Houston to a nice win here against the Ragin' Cajuns. At least that's what I'm expecting.
And now we go to the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa, Florida versus the Wake Forest Demon Deacons of the ACC and the Missouri Tigers of the SEC. Look for Sam Hartman in this one. See what happens with him before you make any decision or picks on what's happening, if he's going to even play in this game, or if he's going to either transfer or try to go to the NFL.
Or some random. That's all the above.
just decides not to play. If Sam Hartman plays, I would probably favor Wake Forest slightly, only because they're from the ACC and the ACC kind of stinks this year. But I think Wake Forest could put points up on the board against Missouri. So until I know news, I won't say anything. But I'd favor Wake Forest if Hartman's playing.
Yeah, this game last year, the Gasparilla Bowl, last year it was UCF against Florida, which was obviously a very entertaining game with it being in Tampa and both teams really not liking each other either. So I think this will be this one not gonna be as entertaining I think as last year, but still should be a fun game. Look for Luther Bolden, I believe it is Luther Bolden, big time true freshman wide receiver from Missouri in this game. That's going to be the difference. I think Wake is still going to win. Will probably still win this one, depending on obviously Sam Hartman, which is clearly their best player. Should be an interesting one. Should be a fun one. But I like the Demon Deacons.
Man, we are one row through 3 rows. So here we go. We've got the Christmas Eve Bowl all every year, the Hawaii Bowl, playing on Christmas Eve between Middle Tennessee State and San Diego State. Middle Tennessee State, obviously, we thought the win at Miami was pretty good. Hindsight's 20.
And that
It was really not that good. They took care of business against everybody. They did get blown out by James Madison, but James Madison's pretty good.
and not in the bowl
They
game
lost.
this year,
They,
sadly.
they should be. They should
Yeah,
be. They should have been in the. They would have been if they were eligible. They would have been in the Sun Belt Championship game. That's how good they were. Um,
yeah, they would have been ahead of Coastal Carolina.
exactly. So they beat the teams they were supposed to, lost the teams they were supposed to lose to, and then San Diego State, same thing. They've started playing really well at the end of the year. They don't really win by a crap ton. Obviously got sunned at home by Arizona, which is interesting to start the year. Their most recent loss was to Air Force. This is one of those ones that's just a pick 'em. I don't like either of these teams. I don't think either of them are that great. I would say probably give me San Diego State, but I can't say for sure. I would cite that that Middle Tennessee State won its last 3, but its last 3 were also against 2 bottom teams. So I won't say that. So I'll take San Diego State or favor them.
Yeah, these are both. San Diego State, I think, is probably the better team here. Mid Tennessee State, don't know much about them, but San Diego State, bigger school. I think honestly is a better team. I'd probably lean the Aztecs.
Mm-hmm. Now we move on to one of the most surprising bowl games, in my opinion, the Quick Lane Bowl, between New Mexico State and Bowling Green. Now, at one point in the season, Bowling Green was 2-4, looked awful. New Mexico State at one point in the season was 1-5. And both of these teams had mid-season rallies to turn it around and become bowl eligible, which is insane. So both teams are pretty hot coming into this. New Mexico State played a lot worse of a schedule, but both teams are pretty good. So I would say give me Bowling Green right now. I never thought I'd be picking Bowling Green to win a bowl game, but you know what? That's what I'm going to do. Give me Bowling Green in this one.
And Bowling Green is going bowling, and they'll win the lone. They'll probably win the lone bowl game there is in all the state of Michigan.
They ain't playing anywhere else.
That's true. I was really hoping this would be like a Big Ten team and then a decent MAC school, but they ended up being this, and I'm just like, bruh, I'm not interested in watching this. Why?
I'm
But
just happy for both programs because imagine being 1-5 and then winning 6 of your last 7 to get bowl eligible. That's crazy.
yeah, it's been impressive turnarounds for both teams, but I guess I would probably lean Bowling Green.
And now we move to the Camellia Bowl in Montgomery, Alabama, between the Buffalo Bulls of the MAC and the Georgia Southern Eagles of the Sun Belt. Give me Georgia Southern in a landslide. They are by far the better team. They play in a much better conference. They beat Nebraska, which isn't super impressive, but at this rate, I mean, it's still a Power 5 team. So they beat Nebraska. They beat James Madison. So they got the better wins, and I got the pleasure of watching this Buffalo team play Akron. I wish I did not, because they looked awful. I'm actually kind of glad I watched that game though, because now I know. I was like, whoever Buffalo plays in a bowl game, I am not picking them. So give me Georgia Southern in that one.
Yeah, Georgia Southern with obviously probably I'd say a better head coach in Clay Helton, the former USC head coach. Don't know much about Buffalo, but it took them rescheduling the Akron game, I think, at the end of the year there to even be bowl eligible. So I would lean Georgia Southern. I'd say they're the better team. They're also from the Sun Belt, which has been incredibly good this year. So I guess I'd lean towards are they the Eagles?
I think so.
Yeah, I'd lean Georgia Southern.
All right, and now we get to another one of my bottom three bowls: Utah State versus Memphis. I don't think either of these teams care to be here. Utah State is one of the most volatile teams I've ever seen. You will either get a performance where they look really decent to pretty good, or you will get a performance where they look absolutely pathetic, a la, I believe it was 55-0 against Alabama. Which, yeah, it's Alabama, but this is a weak Alabama team compared to what we've seen before, and they still got beat 55-0. That's not good. That's not good. They also lost 35-7 to Weber State.
Oh my.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, 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 yeah. So so that's the team we're dealing with here. Versus Memphis, who also did not have a great season. I don't even think they really care to be here right now. It's just they're just here. They lost to SMU. Um, they beat the teams they were supposed to, but they lost to Houston, East Carolina, Tulane, UCF. They lost all the teams they were supposed to. Memphis is a slightly better team. Something just happened behind me. That was from my sheets that I was washing, and he just didn't know I was recording. Yeah, give me Memphis. You better not be trying to sneak in here and hear my bowl breakdowns. He's trying to steal information. He's trying to steal information from me. You see this? He's trying to get the insider thoughts.
Yeah, but I'd probably lean towards Memphis. Like you said, they beat the teams that they're supposed to, and they kind of lost the games that everyone expected them to. So they're not good, they're not bad, they're just kind of meh. So
They didn't lose to Weber State.
yeah, that's pretty much my that's pretty much the assumption. That's pretty much the general. You know, well, never mind.
Yeah.
I'd probably lean Memphis.
And now we've got the Birmingham Bowl in Birmingham, Alabama versus East Carolina and Coastal Carolina. That should be fun. Both teams out of the two best G5 conferences in the Sun Belt and the American. Both teams had decently rough endings. Obviously, East Carolina lost 42-3 to Houston, and Coastal Carolina got blown out by James Madison and then beat down by Troy. I think this game comes down to Grayson McCall. If Grayson McCall is playing, I think he's the best player on the field, and I think that's enough for Coastal Carolina to get it done. But I think this is going to be a very fun game. A very interesting game. Obviously, two Carolina teams will be fun to see playing against each other. So I know the line favors East Carolina by a lot. The line is easy, -9.5. I wonder if they have like insider information that Grayson McCall's not going to play. If Grayson McCall doesn't play, I would take East Carolina. I think they're the better team. I'm scared of the quit factor in Coastal. That's what I'm scared of. I'm scared of the quit factor, but I don't know. This is a hard one. So I think at full strength, Coastal Carolina is better, but I don't know if they'll be at full strength.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about either team here. Coastal, obviously, like you said, got incinerated in that championship game against Troy. After I think it was the week after they got their game against Virginia canceled because of the enormous
They
shooting
did.
in Charlottesville.
They had
Uh,
James Madison. So their last two games were losing 47-7 to James Madison and losing 45-26 to Troy.
Yeah, two blowouts at the end of the year is not a good way to end the season. Don't know how ECU ended their year, but they played it close
They're
with NC State at the beginning of the year, so I guess I'd lean towards the ECU Pirates, but that's
so
just me.
their last few games, UCF and BYU were two nice wins. They lost by 2 to Cincinnati. They got incinerated by Houston, and then they won 49-46 against a bad Temple team. So neither team ended the season very well.
I probably would
So
go still. I guess I'd go with ECU because they didn't absolutely get thrashed in two straight games like
it's
Coastal.
very that's very fair.
And Coastal, I think you're talking about their quarterback being hurt. I don't even. I think he well maybe he entered the
Well, I
portal.
just don't know if he's entered the. That's what I'm
I
more
think he
nervous with.
entered the portal.
Grad transfer. So
I think
that's
that's
probably why
probably why the line is so high because he entered the
ECU's.
portal.
I'll have to check that. And then we've got the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, which I'm debating going to in Phoenix, Arizona, between the Wisconsin Badgers and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I'm only debating on going to this game because I'd like to see a bowl game, not because I think it's two good teams. Because no,
They're gonna be even worse. Neither QB for either of these teams is playing. They're both in the portal. Sanders and
did
Mertz are
either
both
QB play
transferring.
good to begin with?
This is not gonna be a good game.
I was about to say, did either quarterback play good though? Sanders had
Sanders
an
has
up
had
and
his
down season.
moments, but Mertz is bad.
Nurse is pretty bad. Um, give me. I don't want to pick this one. I don't want to pick this one. Give me the Badgers because they might. Their defense will probably be able. Their defense is better, and when both your quarterbacks transfer, the better defense is probably going to win the football game. That's all Wisconsin has to hold their hat on is their defense. So give me the Badgers. I'm not confident though.
This is gonna be an interesting bowl game, obviously, because like I said earlier, both QBs for both teams are transferring, so neither one is going to play. Don't know who the heck Wisconsin has backing up Graham Mertz, but Oklahoma State has, I think, Mike Gun has Coach Gundy's son as their reserve, so I think they should be at least okay with their backup because I think he's come in for a few plays and has been, respectable at least. So I don't know. I mean, neither of these teams are obviously have it. Wisconsin was not great this year. Oklahoma State had a miserable end to the season, getting absolutely demolished by both Kansas teams in two straight weeks. Lost at the end of the year to West Virginia. It was not a good end to the year for Oklahoma State, who at one point was 5-0 and then ended the year 2-5. So yeah, that's not good. As for Wisconsin, they've just not been great all year. Obviously, they hang, like you said, they've been solid defensively, but their big thing is their running room. They have Braylon Allen. They have Ches Maluzzi, who I think is hurt, the other running back, Clemson transfer. So I don't like really either of these teams. I really am frustrated with Oklahoma State since they were doing so well for me for fantasy and then blew the and then absolutely fell off a cliff at the end of the year. But I'll probably lean towards the Cowboys. I think their QB room is a little more sturdy than whoever the heck's gonna step in for Wisconsin. So I'll go with the Cowboys. I'll lean Oklahoma State.
Fair enough. And now we've got this should be a fun one, the Military Bowl in Annapolis, Maryland, between the UCF Knights and the Duke Blue Devils. UCF obviously losing in the championship game versus Tulane. I know their quarterback got hurt and their backup just didn't want to play. I think he ended up wanting to transfer, so their backup didn't want to play, so they were forced to throw in their third stringer. So we'll see what goes on with their quarterback. Duke had a pretty nice end of the season. I know they lost to Pitt. But I know they ended the season on like a 3. They winning like 4 of their last 5. They beat Miami. They beat Boston College. They beat Virginia Tech. Lost it by 2 points at Pitt, and then beat Wake Forest. Pretty good end of the season for the Blue Devils. I think UCF is a slightly better team. Depends on their quarterback. Right now, I want to lean Duke though, just because as much as I don't like Duke in basketball, when you see these teams that typically suck in football and then they do good, I like rooting for them. So I'll lean Duke for right now.
Yeah, this is I think an interesting game. Like you said, I think UCF is probably the better team. Of course, UCF has had some letdowns this year with some really curious losses, like losing at home to Navy, which is not very
I
good.
remember that one.
That was an ugly one. Also, nearly
Yeah,
losing to USF. That was also pretty
on a
ugly.
touchdown where he was out of bounds.
Which allowed them to get into the American Championship game playing Tulane, which again didn't go well. So not a very good end to the season for this UCF team. And they've like I said, they've had some letdowns throughout the year. They've had chances to win some games, and they haven't done all that. They haven't been all that impressive. As for Duke, they have had a shockingly solid year at eight
Came
and
out of
four.
nowhere.
Along with remember, I still never forget when Duke and Kansas played each other and they were both 3-0. It's like, what the heck is happening?
That was amazing, and both of them made a bowl game.
Yeah, both of them made a bowl game, and Kansas is actually next. But these are both solid teams. Duke weirdly having a really solid year. First year head coach over there with the Blue Devils. I'll you know what? I'll lean towards I guess Duke. I mean, I think UCF's a better team, but they haven't been playing like it recently, and Duke is looking to prove something. So I'll lean towards the Blue Devils.
Exactly. All right, and now we move on to the Liberty Bowl between Kansas of the Big 12 and Arkansas of the SEC. Kansas was looking really good. Had that loss to TCU where they lost Jalen Daniels, their starting quarterback, and that's kind of when the wheels fell off for poor Kansas because Jalen Daniels was doing amazing. Jason Bean played well enough to get them to a bowl game, but obviously not enough to get them much more than that. Arkansas, big news for Arkansas coming out recently. That not only is KJ Jefferson going to not be transferring or declaring for the NFL, he's going to be back next year for them, which is huge for the Razorbacks. Obviously, KJ Jefferson's been a huge
You're
part of their
good.
success
Go
recently.
ahead.
So I would probably favor Arkansas out of since they're
Enjoy.
out of the SEC. Kansas had a great season. Unfortunately, that Jalen Daniels injury really did hurt them. But I would favor Arkansas. Better quarterback, better team.
Yeah, I think both of these teams are honestly pretty solid. Kind of funny that really it's the same name except one has an AR in front of it. If you literally look at it that way, but both of these teams have solid QBs. Jalen Daniels, of course, getting hurt in the middle of the season, which kind of derailed the season for the Kansas Jayhawks. As for Arkansas, KJ Jefferson was also hurt during a portion of the year, which kind of derailed their season. So they're clearly very dependent on their quarterback situations. Arkansas's backup is now transferring, but like you said, KJ Jefferson has announced that not only is he playing the game, but he also will be staying for another year. So big news for the Razorbacks. This should be a solid game. It's going to be a really good Liberty Bowl game. I think this is going to be very high scoring. Don't really think either defense is going to really show up for this game, especially Kansas's. So I think this will be very fun, but I think KJ Jefferson will have the last laugh. I will lean towards the Razorbacks.
Fair enough. And now we move on to the Holiday Bowl between the 15th ranked Oregon Ducks and the North Carolina Tar Heels in San Diego, California. Both teams did not have great ends to the season. North Carolina having an absolutely crash and burn kind of style end to the season. Getting beat down, I think, in 3 straight games they lost. And then Oregon had the one, two, three straight games they lost, including one of those to Georgia Tech, which is not good. Oregon obviously lost two of its last three, losing to Washington. They did beat Pac-12 champion Utah Utes before going and losing to their rival on the road in Oregon State, which cost them a chance to play for the Pac-12, which was rough. That being said, I would probably still favor the Ducks. They're out of a better conference, and they did not lose three straight, including Georgia Tech and North NC State. Rough losses for the Ducks to end it, but I think they're going to take their anger for their anger at just missing out on a chance to play for the Pac-12 title and channel it all towards killing North Carolina. Look for a lot of points though, because Bo Nix and Drake May are going to be lighting it up.
Yeah, this is a very intriguing Holiday Bowl game, of course. I believe this will be the first year of which the game is actually going to be played in Petco Park because Qualicum was demolished and replaced with the new San Diego State football field. So now the game has been moved to Petco Park, which is home to the San Diego Padres. So that'll be interesting. But I've always liked this holiday. I've always liked the Holiday Bowl. Always has a good matchup. It's always been a fun game to see, and well, this is gonna and it presents yet another one. As you were saying earlier, North Carolina had a really nice start to the year. Drake May was really awesome for them, and then their end of the season was absolutely miserable. Really getting absolutely well. They didn't get killed by NC State, but they lost to Georgia Tech, which wasn't good, as you had mentioned, and then that Clemson game, well, obviously that did not go well. As for the Oregon Ducks, they had one of the most miserable calls I've ever seen against Oregon State, which in the end lost them the game. Really stupid by the Ducks' part, going for it in like their own 40-yard line, up by three, and didn't get it. One of the stupidest decisions I've ever seen. Really, really dumb. I mean, if I'm Oregon, you punt the ball and you trust your defense. You don't go for it on your own 40-yard line and then get stuffed and let Oregon State trot down the field and score a touchdown. You don't have to, especially with your QB not being 100%. That's really stupid decision by Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. I think Oregon's a bit of a better team. Justin Flo, one of their huge linebackers, did enter the transfer portal, so that is huge news for the Oregon Ducks. Also, a ton of their defense, well, a lot of their team, but mostly their defense. A lot of guys have been entering the portal for Oregon, so they are missing quite a few players, but they still have most importantly, Bo Nix. We'll see how healthy he is for this game, but he'll have plenty of time to heal, so I think he'll be just fine. As you said, expect fireworks. Drake May and Bo Nix are going to be playing up a lot of points. But kind of like I said in the last one, I think Bo Nix will be the one with the game-winning drive, probably.
And then we move to the Texas Bowl, and guess what? Texas, Houston,
Shocker.
Texas versus the Texas Tech Red Raiders of the Big 12 and the Ole Miss Rebels of the SEC. Texas Tech has found ways to win a lot of decently big games this year, and then win the game they're supposed to. They also have had some bad losses, a la getting blown out by Baylor. Losing to Baylor is inherently not a bad loss, but losing 48-10 to Baylor is a bad loss. And then you've got Ole Miss, who started the season insanely hot, and then
lost their last four.
It's ended the season terribly. It is in Texas. Look for Texas Tech to potentially have the upset, because Ole Miss is a 4-point favorite in this game. But look for Texas Tech have the upset. I would take Texas Tech right now. Again, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Texas Tech has been all over the place this year. They had some nice upsets. They had some, like you said, not great losses. They actually, for the first time ever, beat Oklahoma and Texas in the same season, both of which they beat in overtime. So they've won some decent games. They've also lost some, like I said earlier, lost some not great games. Ole Miss had an 8-0 start to the season, was absolutely on a roll. Then they got hammered by LSU, which obviously was not good for them. Then they they started 7-0. Then they lost to LSU. They lost their last three, not their last four. I'm sorry, because then they beat Texas Tech, Texas A&M, And then I know they lost to Mississippi State at the end of the year. Of course, they also lost to Bama. I don't remember what their other loss was, but all in all, it was Arkansas. They got killed. Oh yeah, they got killed by Arkansas. I remember that now. It was not a good end to the year for the Running Rebels. They've been on a downswing for a while now, losing, as I mentioned, 4 of their last 5 and their last 3. Um, I think Texas Tech is coming into this game on a much bigger upswing than Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is a better team, but Texas Tech is playing much better. I would lean the Red Raiders.
Exactly. And now we move to the Pinstripe Bowl in New York versus the Syracuse Orange and the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Before this stream started, it was hilarious because we were talking about this game, and on Mitch's side didn't have a line, and I guessed it was going to be Minnesota -8. And then I look at the line, and there's a line, and it's 7.5 Minnesota. I'm like, look at that, I know. Yeah, no, I definitely. I think Syracuse can make it interesting, but I would definitely lean Minnesota. Syracuse has one weakness. Their biggest weakness is their run defense. Got murdered by Will Shipley. Got murdered by every running back we played. Guess who Minnesota has at the running back position? Only one of the best running backs in college football, at Mo Ibrahim. So,
He's also hurt though, so we'll see if he actually
is he?
plays.
If he doesn't play, I think Syracuse has a shot in this game, especially if Garrett Schrader and Sean Tucker play as good as they have been.
I think
Obviously,
Tucker's hurt too. There's been big news about, will both of these guys actually play for the game or something like that.
Obviously, Syracuse lost 5 of their last 6 after losing to Clemson, which happens every year. Whether we beat or lose to Clemson, we just absolutely fall apart. Their only one win coming in the last week where they had to come back in the fourth quarter against Boston College to beat them. So if Mo Ibrahim plays, that line of -8 might be a little favorable to Syracuse. Might be a little too low. I would lean Minnesota though. As a Syracuse fan, I would lean Minnesota.
Yeah, the Pinstripe Bowl has always been a fun one. There's always an awesome matchup in this bowl game. Syracuse, as you said, had a very rough end to the season. Uh, as you said, losing 5 of their last 6, some of which they got absolutely dominated in. As for Minnesota, they've been okay this year. Obviously, a very good running back in Mohammed Ibrahim, whatever it is. But we'll have to see who's healthy for both teams, because I've heard a lot about Sean Tucker probably maybe not playing, or Mo Ibrahim not playing, and who knows if Tanner Morgan's going to even start for this game. Could be Kelly Akmanis, who I've watched him play. Not not all that impressed. But the big thing for Minnesota, I think the difference in this game is the Minnesota defense, which is one of the top units in the country. They have not obviously played a lot of great teams, considering how bad Big Ten West is, but they're still one of the top defensive units in the country. Even if they have played bad opponents. Still shows that they've dominated those teams. So I think it'll be a solid game, but I'd probably lean the Gophers. I think they're a little bit better of a team. They're also ending the year a little bit stronger than Syracuse.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they react against Syracuse's read option, because they're very heavy read option with a very mobile quarterback and a really good, one of the best running backs in college football if he plays.
Yeah.
Which, why you don't hand it off to him in the Clemson game, why you only gave him 5 carries in the Clemson. Anyway, that was weeks ago. Still mad about that. Now we go to the Cheez-It Bowl, which is interesting. You have the 13th ranked Florida State Seminoles 9-3 against the 6-6 Oklahoma Sooners. Really interesting matchup. I feel like Florida State fans are like, wow, this is a really weak bowl game to be in. But now if you're Florida State, you got to make sure you come out and win this game, because if you lose this game, that is not good. Florida State obviously had a really good end of the season, lost those 3 games in the middle of the college football season, and then blew the doors off of everybody else they played, pretty much. So Florida State had a great end of the year. Jordan Travis played amazing. I think Jordan Travis said he's going to be back next year as well. This team's going to be really, really fun next year. But I would say give me the Seminoles to keep the momentum rolling and get some momentum going for next year to win the Cheez It Bowl.
Yes, Mike Norvell, head coach of Florida State, has been in the hot seat for Florida State going into this year. And towards the end, obviously, their end of this year has been outstanding. They have had an incredible end to this season. Jordan Travis, as you mentioned, has been absolutely unbelievable. And this has been a great season for Florida State. And with a win, they would have a 10-win year, which I can't remember the last time. Florida State, probably the last time they had a double-digit win season was the Jimbo Fisher era. So this would be that'd be big for Florida State and the Seminoles and their and revival of their program. As for Oklahoma, their program absolutely got throttled last year with Lincoln. Well, this year with Lincoln Riley going to USC and taking literally half of Oklahoma with him. And that left Brent Venables in a very bad spot. Oklahoma had a okay start to the year, but then kind of fizzled out towards the end. Had some not great games. Uh, they finished the year at 6-6. This Oklahoma defense is very bad,
That's an
and
understatement.
their offense is decent. I mean, they still have Dylan Gabriel leading the offense. This is big for Oklahoma too, because if they lose this game, they'll have their first losing season for the first time in like 3, 4, 5 decades. So Oklahoma
Yeah,
has
and
something to play for too, as does Florida State. So I think it'll be interesting because neither defense I don't think is that special. But considering Florida State is only traveling to Orlando and Oklahoma's defense is absolutely putrid, I'll lean Florida State.
Florida State is traveling, whereas Oklahoma's defense will probably not travel. All right. We've got this is going to be a fun one. The Alamo
This is
Bowl
one
is
of the better
always
ones.
fun, but you've got the Texas Longhorns, number 20th in the country, versus the 12th ranked Washington Huskies at 10-2 of the Pac-12. It's Texas, so obviously Texas is going to be favored in the spread. That's just how Texas is. They could be the worst team in the country, and Vegas would still find a way to favor them in the spread. I think it's going to be a really, really fun game. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really, really fun game, but I think both teams have momentum going into the end of the season. I think Washington's kind of bummed they didn't get a chance to play for the Pac-12. Same with Texas. Both of them missed out. They were both in the race. No, Washington wasn't in the race. But Texas was in the race. Washington didn't get in because of a tiebreaker with Utah. So I would right now lean the Huskies because I think their offense is so much fun. But this is going to be a fun game. I don't really know who to pick in this one.
Well, once again, like a lot of these games, it's going to be battle of the quarterbacks. Texas is Quinn Ewers up against Washington's Michael Penix. Big news for the Longhorns, though. Obviously, Quinn Ewers has been the guy all year. Hudson Card, though, Texas's big-time backup, is transferring. He has entered the portal. Really good backup, honestly. Hudson Card, he is not a chump change QB. He's actually pretty darn good. So
He
very
almost
curious
beat
to see where
Alabama.
he goes. Huh?
He almost beat Alabama.
He did. Yeah, he came in for Quinn Ewers when he was hurt against Bama, and he nearly beat him. So that's a really good quarterback. I
They
think
wanted
he'll
to put
be.
that team in the playoffs, and they wanted to put that team in the playoffs.
Yeah, very sad. But this Texas team, honestly, obviously, Quinn Ewers has been up and down this year, but his talent is clearly there. As for Michael Penix, he's had probably one of the best seasons in his career. I mean, he had a really good year with Indiana that one season, but he might even been better this year. I think he might have announced that he's even coming back for an extra year. But Penix is a really good quarterback. He's an outstanding player. He's been playing so well for Washington. I think this is going to be one of a shootout for sure. Texas does have the home field advantage with it being in San Antonio, which I don't think is that far from Austin. So clearly, everyone will be traveling to watch the Longhorns. Um, I think Texas has that advantage, but I think Washington might be a slightly better team. This is going to be very fun to see and definitely not one to miss. But I'll lean towards Michael Penix, who has been on absolute roll all season long.
Yep, and Penix will be back for the 2023 season.
He got snubbed
All
in the
right,
Heisman Trophy conversation. He should have
all
been
right.
there.
Let's roll through these last few here. We got like 15, like 10 more to like 10 to 15 more to go. So let's roll through these here. We've got an old ACC battle, an old ACC rivals in the Mayo Bowl, fighting for which coach gets the Mayo bath. We've got the NC State Wolfpack and the Maryland Terrapins. Give me Maryland. Just think the Big Ten's a better conference. They're a more physical team. I think they're a better team. Obviously, NC State hasn't had Devin Leary most of the year, but they definitely obviously won't have him now because he's gone.
Yep.
But yeah, give me the Terrapins. I just think they're a better team.
Yeah, NC State has kind of been all over the place this year, but with no Devin Leary, they're a much different team. As for Maryland, they're not a great team, but their offense I think is pretty solid. And it'll probably be another offensive game. A lot of these gonna be offensive games, but I think Maryland has the edge with the better QB.
Yep, and now we move on to the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas,
Really good
between
one.
the Pitt Panthers and the UCLA Bruins. Is DTR playing?
Uh, not sure. I haven't heard anything otherwise. So
If he's playing, yeah, give me
I know for Pitt there won't be any Keaton
no.
Slovis as he is transferring.
I don't think that really matters
But this should be a
that
very
well.
fun game.
It should be. I
Yeah,
would take UCLA though.
yeah, I'd probably lean towards the Bruins too. I do like Pittsburgh's team. I think they're solid. I think they do have a decent team. I don't think they're chump change, but this is going to be a really fun one. I probably will give the edge to UCLA. I think they're a better team. The combination of DTR and Zach Charbonnet is a bit too much to handle. I'll lean Bruins here.
And now you've heard of Catholics versus convicts. How about Cox versus convicts? I heard someone calling this game. You've got the 19th ranked South Carolina Gamecocks, also known as the college football playoff Angel of Death, killing both Tennessee and Clemson's chances to make it. And then the 21st ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the Gator Bowl. This should be fun, except for the fact that Drew Pine is not going to play because he's transferring. And Ty
Jeez,
Buckner
haven't
is
heard
out
that
for the year.
before.
And Buckner is out for the year. So yeah, give me the Gamecocks in this one. I think South Carolina is going to be able to win this one. Notre Dame just doesn't have a quarterback. Michael Mayer is great, but if you don't have anybody to throw to Michael Mayer, unless you want to put Michael Mayer at quarterback. But give me the Gamecocks in this one.
Yeah, this is going to be totally dependent on if Spencer Rattler can continue his unbelievable end to the season of where he absolutely tore apart Tennessee and Clemson. Well, Tennessee. Don't know if he really tore apart Clemson that much, but either case, South Carolina was very good in their last two games of the year. As you said, beating both Tennessee and Clemson and ending both of their CFP chances. Both of these teams have actually played Clemson, and both of them have won against Clemson. Notre Dame blowing them out, and South Carolina getting the win in Death Valley, of which no one has done in like 7 years. So pretty impressive for South Carolina. I think both of these teams are pretty good, and this should be very fun. Gator Bowl. This is going to be a very good game. I think Notre Dame's defense will make it interesting, but as you said, with no QB play for the Irish, I think South Carolina will eke out a win here. Well, I'll lean towards South Carolina. I think they could eke out a win here. Oh, this ain't interesting.
I was about to say. And then we've got the Barstool Arizona Bowl between Ohio and Wyoming. Thankfully, this will be on the Barstool Network because I don't care.
What even is that?
It's like a college campus life thing. Like,
oh,
there's a bar stool for each college campus, and it's like a college life thing for each campus. Ohio's a better team, so give me Ohio. There's not going to be a lot of points scored though. There's not going to be a lot of points scored. Wyoming scores like no points at all.
Well, the over under is 43, so they clearly agree with you
Under,
there.
under, under, under. Smash the under.
Yeah, I think this should be a decent game. I don't know much about either of these teams. Wyoming was in the Mountain West race for a while, but they fell out after losing to Boise State. Uh, Ohio made the MAC championship. I guess I'll go Ohio, or I'll lean Ohio. Not that I know anything about either of these teams, so. And here
Yeah,
comes the very orange bowl game.
I was about to say, now we get into our New Year's Six, some of our New Year's Six bowls. We've got the Orange Bowl between the Orange Tennessee Volunteers and the Orange Clemson Tigers.
A lot of
This will
orange.
be December 30th. Clemson is a touchdown favorite, and I agree with them. I would take Clemson because of two reasons. One, Joe Milton is not their starting quarterback, and two, Joe Milton, obviously the Tennessee. Is he? Was he? Or do they have somebody else that they're playing now? Or is it Joe Milton?
It's Milton.
They got great receivers, but he can't even. He'll target 10 yards past them.
He was actually doing pretty well against South Carolina, and I think he did decently against Vanderbilt. So I think he had a decent end to the year. But yes, it's Vanderbilt and it's South Carolina's defense, so
hey,
not much to really go off there.
I can't disrespect. Vanderbilt got 2 back-to-back SEC wins, so obviously they're great. So I would end too. Cade Klubnik came in the ACC championship game and looked absolutely amazing. He was the
which
spark
forced
that
DJ the transfer.
Yeah,
He should
my
have.
My dad still calls him ukulele. DJ ukulele.
Oh my.
But yeah, Cade Klubnik is definitely the better quarterback, so I would favor Clemson in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not obviously all year. I've never been a big fan of Hendon Hooker, but he did have an outstanding season. Of course, getting hurt against South Carolina absolutely derailed the entire Tennessee season. But I mean, Hooker was really good, but Joe Milton, he clearly has potential, but just doesn't have the accuracy. He has a big arm, has a big body, can move a little bit, but has not been accurate with the ball whatsoever. So it's going to totally depend on if Joe Milton can hit the broadside of a barn in the Orange Bowl. As for Clemson, Cade Klubnik, true freshman, came in finally after they should have done that weeks ago after the Georgia Tech game. They finally did it in the ACC championship game, and oh boy, does he look good. He looks really darn good. And I could have told them that, but they clearly did not agree. They want to keep starting DJ. But now he will be starting for this game against Tennessee. Tennessee's defense has clearly not shown as that special. I have Clemson winning this. Well, I lean Clemson. Well, no, forget. I'm picking Clemson. Tennessee is missing what has been their best player all year, and their backup. Well, us Wolverine fans know them all too well. Let me break you on the news there, Tennessee. It's not going well for you, and what will be a very orange bowl game. Give me the.
I know, I love that. And we will skip the playoff games for now. We're gonna do those two separately at the end. But we will have the All-State Sugar Bowl between Alabama and Kansas State. Kansas State, congratulations, you're the Big 12 champions.
Congratulations, you're going to get destroyed by Alabama.
Here's Alabama. I don't think they'll get destroyed. I think Kansas State will put up a fight. I think it'll be decent. I mean, Alabama, they look good, but again, they haven't looked outstanding. They lost to some teams that aren't. I mean, they lost to Tennessee and LSU, who those losses have looked a lot worse recently, especially the LSU loss, because LSU ended their season by getting blown out by Texas A&M. And then blown out by Georgia, which everybody does that, but blown out by Texas A&M. I think Alabama's definitely going to win this game, but I think Kansas State will put up more of a fight than I think a lot of people will think they will. So give me the Alabama though.
Yeah, everyone wants to go with Kansas State in the upset. I'm not buying it. I think Bama will cover a 4-point spread.
Wow, that's actually a really small spread.
Yeah, Bama, I think, is as clearly the better team. Kansas State has had a solid year, of course, ending TCU's perfect season and winning the Big 12 title game in overtime. But I mean, Will Howard has been good. Deuce Vaughn is good, but are we really? I mean, they've had a nice end to the year, sure, but are we really going to say that Kansas State has a chance against Bama? I mean, yes, Bama has had two not great games, but are we really going to say Kansas State's defense is going to do anything against Bryce Young?
Potentially.
I can't see it happening. I mean, I want to because obviously I'm not the biggest Bama guy, so I wouldn't mind seeing Kansas State for no apparent reason just beat Alabama, but I can't see it happening. I think Bama's is clearly a better team, so I'd lean Tide.
I think I think it'll be interesting. And now we've got the rematch of the Citrus Bowl last year, which Kentucky won 20-17. But you've
Why we
got the
need this
Kentucky
again, nobody
Wildcats
knows.
versus the Iowa Hawkeyes. And not only will it be worse than last year, just because the teams are worse than last year, but neither of them have quarterbacks. Will Levis will not play. Spencer Petras will not play. And Anthony Padilla will
Alex
also
Padilla isn't playing
Alex
either.
Padilla
He's
will
now in the
also not play.
portal.
Give me Kentucky because they're an SEC team and they were within 6 points of Georgia. I guess
These
being within
two are
6 points of
not
Georgia.
great teams, clearly. Iowa has a very tough defense, so the over under for this game is 31 and a half, and that is very generous. This is going to be like 9-6. Remember when Iowa Illinois finished that game 9-6 in Champaign? That's what this game is going to be. There's not going to be any scoring in this game except like a couple field goals. But I'll lean towards Kentucky because I was just so incompetent offensively. That'll change when Cade McNamara comes into town and probably Eric All. But
Eric Hall.
Iowa's offense right now is a joke. And they do have two good tight ends, but as you said, there is no quarterback, absolutely no QB to throw to them, with Petras hurt and not playing, and Padilla transferring and obviously not playing. So whoever the heck their third stringer is going to be the guy, if they even have a third stringer. So I go with Kentucky. I just think their QB situation is probably a little better than Iowa's.
And now we've got the Ryla Quest Bowl between the 22nd ranked Mississippi State Bulldogs and the Illinois Fighting Illini of the Big Ten. You've got Air Raid versus Stifling Secondary, so that's going to be a very fun matchup to watch. I do think Mississippi State pulls it out. I think they're better. I think they're a slightly better team. They played in obviously a slightly better conference, which I can't even say if it's a slightly better conference. You never know. But I'll take Mississippi State in this one, but I'm not super confident in it.
Actually, I really like Illinois in this one. I missed when this game was the Outback Bowl. Rallia Quest is stupid. It should still be the Outback Bowl. Why didn't you keep your naming rights? Come on, Outback.
Where's my free bloomin' onions?
Yeah, come on.
I missed that.
But yeah, this is going to be a really good game. Mississippi State is totally dependent on the air raid offense with Will Rogers and and obviously their passing attack, which I think is pretty good. But we've seen how good Illinois' defense is this year. It is absolutely lethal. And then on the offensive end of the ball, they're not the greatest, obviously, throwing it, as Syracuse fans and Serbenski all know with Tommy DeVito. But DeVito is a good runner, and they have probably one of the best running backs in the country, right next to Blake Corum and obviously everybody else. Chase Brown is unbelievable, and I think he's going to run through Mississippi State's defense and give Illinois a very good bowl win here. I think it's going to be so much fun. This will be a very good game, but I'm leaning Illini here. I really like this Illinois team.
This next one's going to be absurd and so much fun. You've got the Cotton Bowl Classic versus the 16th ranked Tulane Green Wave and Cam Rising Sun. I mean the USC Trojans in the Cotton Bowl Classic. Two teams that absolutely cannot buy a defensive stop to save their lives. And two offenses that are very,
Well, Tulane's got
Very fun.
a decent defense.
They have a decent defense, but they're
USC
still
does
more
not.
they're still more known for their offense more than anything. I think this game is going to be super fun. I would assume Caleb Williams is playing because he's not draft eligible yet. The
Well,
only
he's
way I would
hurt, so
that's the only
depends on if
if
he's healthy enough.
if Caleb Williams is hurt, Tulane wins this all day. There's just not enough offense that USC I don't think can do to keep up with Tulane. I really do want to pick Tulane. My only worry is the USC quit factor because I mean you have the chance for the college football playoff and you absolutely just blew it out of the water.
That was so
blew
sad to watch.
Blew it out of the water. So obviously there's not as many people on players on that team that might be as excited to play in the Cotton Bowl. But I'm more interested because Tulane is going to come out absolutely fired up because this is a team that has not won the American ever and is playing in a New Year's Six Bowl after going. I think they went like 2-10 last year.
Yeah, they
and
did.
They're now sitting. They went 2-10 last year. Now they're sitting at 11-2 with a great offense. I lean Tulane slightly in this game. If Caleb Williams is for sure playing, then it's a 50-50 game. I still might lean Tulane just because I think they're going to be the more motivated team going into it. But I think both teams are outstanding. I would not be shocked if either of these two teams win, just because the over-under should be set at like 80, though.
Yeah, the over-under is at 62, so that's very generous. I would put that at about at least 70. But this is a interesting game. Tulane has had a unbelievable. I mean, we obviously, everyone wants to talk about Michigan's big turnaround from 2020 to 2021. I'd say Tulane's is arguably way better than that. I don't think there's a comparison between Michigan's turnaround and Tulane's. It's been an unreal turnaround for the Tulane Green Wave, going from a 2-10 year last year all the way now to American champs 11-2, and you're playing probably one of the best football programs in all of college football in USC. So not only is this just a big opportunity for Tulane to win a huge bowl game, it's also a huge opportunity for Tulane to beat probably one of the best programs in college football history. So I think Tulane's going to come in incredibly fired up. Their head coach has done a fantastic job of turning around programs. I think his name Willie Fritz. Watch that name. I think he'll be. If it's not this coaching cycle, it will be next coaching cycle. He will be getting a very good head coaching job very soon. I think this is going to be an unbelievably good game. I think for USC, it totally depends on whether or not Caleb Williams plays, who likely is going to be the Heisman Trophy winner. We obviously know that USC's defense is probably the worst defense in all of college football, as they probably missed like 50 tackles in that game against Utah. One of the most painful games for me to ever watch, since I was heavily rooting for USC, not just for fantasy purposes, but also because I didn't want to see Ohio State in the playoff.
I didn't either, but I picked Utah at the beginning of the year, so I'm at least justified in that.
In all honesty, if Caleb Williams stays healthy all game, it's probably a much different game. Utah might still win, but I think USC doesn't get destroyed.
I think it's like 47-45 instead of 47-23. I don't think they beat them, but they don't get blown out. That's for sure. It's probably closer to what the first game was, the 43-42 game.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good game. As I said, it'll depend on whether Williams is playing or not. I'll probably lean towards Tulane because I don't know if Williams is going to play. I don't know if he'll be healthy enough. So give me the Green Wave for a huge win against the Trojans.
And we got two more games before we go to the playoff games. We've got the Citrus Bowl between the 17th ranked LSU Tigers and the Purdue Boilermakers. LSU is an 8-point favorite in the game. LSU is a more talented team and a better team. That Purdue team is just a really fun, scrappy team. But I don't know if they're going to have their coach. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm pretty sure Louisville is going to come around to Jeff Brom. They came around once, and he said no. But I think if they come around and offer Brom the job at Louisville, I think he'll go, because as great as the season was for Purdue getting to the Big Ten championship, how replicatable is that? Especially with divisions going away here soon, it's gonna be a lot harder to win the Big Ten or get to the Big Ten title. And if your alma mater comes calling, you're probably going to answer. So they might not even have their coach at the time. So I would lean LSU, but Purdue is just one of those fun, scrappy teams that you never know.
Yeah, both of these poor teams murdered by the number 1 and 2 teams in the country. LSU 50-30, and Purdue 43-22, with the Wolverines, of course, winning another championship. This is still the 2021 one. Need to get the other one,
And you
but
get the back to back.
yeah, that's exactly what I need. But this should be, I think, a decent game. I think both of these teams have had up and down moments. Purdue is very obviously well known for upsets, and I think this is one of those candidates for the Purdue Boilermakers to do what they've done all year long, the spoiler makers. LSU is a wildly inconsistent team. If they had stayed just consistent all year long and played their best football, they probably would be in the playoff right now. But they obviously have not. I probably would lean towards LSU, but watch out for Purdue. They're always a sneaky team. They always play hard and play to win, and it's going to be a dogfight.
Exactly. And now probably the game that I'm most excited for outside of the playoff games. The Rose Bowl Classic between Penn State and Utah, the Pac-12 champs. Utah obviously had that loss at the end of the year to Oregon, but ended up going to the Pac-12 championship and winning it for the second straight year by beating down on USC. And Penn State blew out every team they played except for Michigan and Ohio State, who they got blown out by both times. So it makes sense. I think it's going to be a very fun game. I think it could go either way. I would lean slight edge to Utah just because that USC win is super impressive. Cam Rising is one of the grittiest quarterbacks I have ever seen, and I think they want to win it after just barely falling short last year against Ohio State. I think they have a lot of confidence. I think this Penn State team has a lot of confidence too, and I think they can come in and make it really, really good. But I think Utah's confidence going into it, I think Utah will win a close one.
Yeah, well, I did say that what I didn't want was yet another Utah Ohio State Rose Bowl. I did not want that again. I still got Utah, but at least I didn't get Ohio State again. So
I would have rather it been Utah Ohio State than Ohio State in the Peach Bowl.
That's true. I would have just rather Ohio State not be in either, but that wasn't likely to happen.
One of the two.
So, but this game I think should be pretty solid. Utah's obviously had a nice end to the year, obviously blowing out USC after Caleb Williams went down. I think that kind of changed the narrative of that entire game, with Williams not being able to scramble, which is a big part of his game. And also having a big old gash on his hand, which didn't really let him throw the ball that accurately. So everything went perfectly for Utah. I think obviously they blew him out, but I think the soul was pretty much just pulled out of USC after they saw, obviously, the heart and soul of their team down, hurting, and honestly barely even getting on the field anymore.
And that their defense could not stop.
And yeah, that was not helping USC's case. But as for Penn State, of course, they handled everybody else that they should have, and against Ohio State and Michigan, it didn't go so well. So Penn State, I don't trust Sean Clifford as far as I can throw him. But I do trust their running room. I like all their running backs. They're all solid guys. Utah's defense is very suspect. Cam Rising is really good, but we'll see if Joey Porter Jr. plays in this game or not. I think that'll be big for Penn State, whether or not he's actually in the game. I guess I'll lean towards the Big Ten on Penn State, but I could definitely see Utah getting the win and getting that Rose Bowl, of which they thought they had last year. But since Ohio State had literally the best receiving core on planet Earth, that did not happen. But Penn State does not have the best receiving core on planet Earth, so might go a little differently this year.
Fair enough. And now we get to the playoff games. We'll start with the early game, the 4 p.m. Eastern time game on the Fiesta Bowl Classic between the Michigan Wolverines, Big Ten champions, versus the TCU Horned Frogs, who were 12-0 in the regular season and just fell slightly short against K-State. This should be a really fun game. I know it opened as a 9-point line, but I think I heard it went down to a 7.5. Yeah, it went down to a 7.5 point line. This will be a really fun game because the fourth quarter is going to be really fun. These are two teams where Michigan is probably the best fourth quarter team in college football. And one of those teams that just always finds ways to sneak back and win the game in the fourth quarter, too. Two very good fourth quarter teams. I'm going to lead Michigan, obviously.
Duh.
Duh. But I think TCU, a lot of saw something. It was like chances to win the college football national championship. It was like Georgia 200, Michigan 300, 500, and TCU 1600. A lot of teams do not trust TCU. I think they're the weakest team in here, but they deserve. I don't want to hear nothing about anybody saying they don't deserve to be here. I don't care if you think Alabama would beat them. They went 12-0 in the regular season. They deserve to be here, but I do think Michigan will win. I think it'll be fun though.
Yeah, obviously TCU has a Heisman candidate in Max Duggan, who didn't play, I don't think, all that well against Kansas State in the Big 12
Till
title
the end,
game.
until that last drive.
Yeah, but TCU, I mean, the whole story of their entire season has been the fact that just in the fourth quarter, they, like you said, they find their way back into the game. They find ways to win. I mean, they're literally the opposite of the Detroit Lions. The Lions always find a way to lose a game, while TCU just continues to find ways to somehow win games. Like, look at the Baylor game. They're down by like 8 points with 2 minutes to go, and they get down the field. They score a touchdown, but they don't get the 2 point conversion. Instead of going with an onside, they just kick it off because they still have 3 timeouts. Baylor doesn't go anywhere with the ball, and then they get down the field. They have that enormous scramble to try and kick a field goal, and they make it. TCU, they continue to find ways to win games. They haven't obviously really blown that many teams out, but they continue to find ways to win games close. As well, both of these teams actually had close calls on that same day. I mean, I was talking about TCU, Baylor. Michigan had a close call with Illinois on the same day at the same time. But
I
both
didn't get to watch
teams.
either of those games because I had a leadership conference at both the games. I'm like, wasn't that the week that everybody struggled though? Georgia won 16-6 against Kentucky. Ohio State Maryland had a chance to beat Ohio State on the last drive. Like that was a chaotic week.
It was for sure. But I think TCU is a solid squad, but their defense is very suspect. And I think it's going to be, and really all I think they have is their offense. I think Michigan's a complete team. Obviously, no Blake Corum, but we've seen that obviously Donovan Edwards
It's a
a
stud.
is a very good reserve and a very good
The
replacement.
Don.
The
The
Don,
Don.
yes, the Don. But I think Donovan Edwards will do just fine in the role. Obviously, we'll miss Blake Corum, but Donovan Edwards is clearly a very good replacement. So I don't think the Wolverines will be hurt all that much by losing Blake Corum. I think they should win this one. Obviously, I think TCU will give them a run. We'll give them a challenge, but I think Michigan's the better team. I'd go Wolverines. Nah, it's coming
Honestly,
from the Wolverine fan here, but you know, I think mostly everybody else would do the same.
honestly, that was the most legendary celebration when he scored that last touchdown. And he did the Ohio State marching band dude thing in the end zone when he scored. He was running the end zone like this. That honestly, it's not as good, but it rivals the Desmond Howard in the end
Oh, of
zone.
course, yeah.
But he was doing that was the best. And then speaking of which, we've got the Peach Bowl. We've got Georgia versus Ohio State. I will tell you right now, I think the only team that poses Georgia a threat, serious threat, Michigan poses them a pretty decent threat. I think Michigan's going to be a pretty good fight with them. Ohio State poses, I think, a stronger threat than Michigan because they do things differently than what Georgia does. Georgia's just supercharged Michigan. Georgia does what Michigan does, but better. So, yeah, but I do think Ohio State poses a chance, but they have all these stud receivers, but my only thing is if your front seven got beat up by Michigan and CJ Stroud was getting pressured and couldn't make throws to his receivers because you were getting pressure from Michigan's defensive line, do you know how much pressure CJ Stroud is going to be under against Jalen
What?
Carter and the Georgia
I know.
defensive
We'll
line?
be done soon.
Against the Georgia defensive line, CJ Stroud is going to be under pressure every single play. And if they don't pick up their physicality between now and December 31st, they are not going to win this game. You can have all the stud receivers you want. He's not going to be able to get the ball to him because Jalen Carter is going to be picking him up every single play like he did to Jaden Daniels. He's going to just run up to him and bear hug him. Just bear hug. There's nothing they're going to be able to do. If you got out physical by Michigan, you're going to get out physical by Georgia. Like, Georgia crushed Michigan last year. Granted, that was a better Georgia team, but this is still a really good Georgia team, a super physical Georgia team. I just don't know what State's going to do against that. What if they're going to be able to do anything against that level of physicality?
Yeah, I think this Georgia team. Honestly, Ohio State they got throttled by the Wolverines, and they were in Columbus. So, and no Jackson Smith and Jigba for Ohio State. Now, granted, that's been the case mostly all year, but Ohio State coming into that game against Michigan, Jim Knowles, of course, the former Oklahoma State DC, his game plan against the Wolverines is awful, and it got Ohio State absolutely killed. And I don't know what his game plan is going to be against Georgia, but
Or
uh,
stopping Bowers.
yeah, I don't know what the heck he's going to try and do and stop him, but I don't see it going well. And as for Georgia's defense, I think Georgia's defense is better than Michigan's, which is going to cause a lot of problems for Ohio State. It's going to be I don't think Ohio State. Well, I think Georgia will win this game pretty handily. They could even blow out Ohio State, but I don't think it's going to be necessarily like a 21 or 30 point win. I think Ohio State will at least make it a little competitive, but I think Georgia still will win pretty comfortably.
Yep. And then quick picks for the championship. It's Michigan, Georgia, which we both picked. I think as much as I'm a Michigan homer and I love my boys in blue, and I think they pose a decent chance this year. It's not going to be 34-16 or whatever last year was. It's not going to be as bad as last year. I'm telling you that. They're going to Michigan will be competitive this year. I still don't think they beat Georgia, but I think they have their corners can cover a lot better. I don't think they're going to get as out physical as last year, because last year we were not ready for how physical Georgia was going to be. But this year, I'm sure Harbaugh's been preparing his guys for how physical they are. All that being said, I still think Georgia's the better team. I think they're the best team in college football. They've played close with teams that aren't that good, but every time they've gone up against a good team, they've blown the doors off them. I don't think Michigan gets the doors blown off of them, but I think Georgia's the better team. So realistically, I think Georgia will win that game.
Yeah, in a Georgia Michigan rematch, I think it would be it wouldn't be like last year, but I still think Georgia wins. I mean, I don't think Georgia's as good as it was last year, but it's still a very good team. And Michigan, it's going to totally depend on whether or not JJ McCarthy can, make some plays, get some offense going. Because I mean Georgia's a really good. That's a really good and tough defense. It's going to take both the running game and the passing game working to perfection. And I've watched our offensive coordinators long enough, and I don't and kind of like I said, I don't trust whoever it was I said earlier. I don't trust them. I don't trust Sean Clifford as far as I can throw him. I can't trust our offensive coordinators as far as I can throw them. So I think Georgia will win, not just because of the incompetence of our OCs, but I think just because Georgia's a better team. They have the better athletes. They have the better defense. I don't know if their offense is necessarily better, but they have a really good defense. I think it'll be a physical battle for sure. It'll be one probably in the trenches. But I'll go with Georgia really close.
Which is hilarious because for the past decade we've had everybody's transforming to air raid, pass, and then Georgia and Michigan are like, all right, y'all are gonna pass. Let's just go back to good old fashioned run it up the middle football. And now people are gonna start being like, oh crap, we got to start doing run them up the middle football. There's gonna be another decade of run them up the middle football. And then they're like, all right, now how do we adjust to beat this? Let's start passing it. It's just gonna go back and forth.
Well, it's gonna be
Michigan,
this is the ongoing chess match, and it's always fun to
yeah,
see.
Michigan is slightly better than they were last year, in my opinion. Georgia is a decent bit worse than they were last year, but I still don't think that gap has been close enough for Michigan to win. But thank you all so much for watching. That was a long video because there's a lot of bowl games. So hopefully you had your popcorn ready and were able to watch this, doing it in the background while you were watching something else. Or doing something else, but have this in the background. But hope you all enjoyed our insight. Enjoy bowl season. We'll have our actual bowl season picks next week. That video should be a lot shorter because today we kind of previewed what we think of these teams. But next week we'll be able to just go through and pick them. But that's Mitch. I'm Jacob. Go watch our other videos. We'll probably have a transfer portal video out next week. This video went a little longer than
Gonna
I
have
thought.
to with all the
we won't. We
transfers.
won't do it. We won't do it this week. We'll probably have a transfer portal and Bulls picks, and that will wrap up college football until the championship playoff discussions. So thank you all so much for watching. Have a great day. Peace.